What's going on, everybody? It's Rich Perez welcoming you back into another dose of the rundown. We got a special guest in with us today, associate head coach for the Princeton Tigers, two-time Division I national champion for the Indiana Hoosiers. He actually won, in my opinion, the toughest senior nationals bracket ever. Mr. Joe Dubuque.
Pressure's on him. He didn't feel that way. He says, I've got my belt. And he wrestled loosely all tournament, and he is going to win his second national championship.
First one from Indiana to do that since the 30s.
Get in there.
Since Charlie McDaniel way back in 1935 and 1938. Joe Dubuque, your champion at 125.
Ladies and gentlemen, still tonight, black band, gentlemen. Two-time champion in Indiana University history.
Joe Dubuque, one of 5 former champions that will climb on to this mat here.
What's up, Rich, man? I appreciate you having me on. I think this is going to be a fun episode.
So do I. So, I mean, got to get started. You're the first Ivy League coach I had on here. Unfortunately, the Ivy Leagues were canceled this season. You know, what was it like hearing that news? And, I mean, the season's going on right now. What have you guys kind of been doing in the meantime?
So yeah, getting that unfortunate news was, it was heartbreaking, but also I think we kind of saw it coming, or at least knew that there was a good chance of them doing that. So, so we weren't very shocked when we heard the news. And honestly, like as a coaching staff, especially Coach Ayers, he does a really good job of tempering ours and our guys' expectations. You know, so we always kind of put that in the back of their mind, like, hey, this is a possibility. You know, we might not have a season, both as just an NCAA season and also just an Ivy League season. So, on that front, we were kind of, I guess, prepared to take the news. And we were actually out at the Junior Nationals, which was in Nebraska in November. So we went out there as a club. And it was almost right when we got done with our night before weigh-in or night before workout. So we kind of had to have a team meeting and just, you know, tell our guys like, hey, it is what it is. It's over. We got to compete tomorrow. You know, you gotta block it out. I mean, this is a test, you know, just like anything, getting bad news, you gotta push it, you know, you got to push it down and almost kind of push it to the back of your mind and focus on the task at hand. And that was competing the next day. So, so yeah, I mean, right now, there are students coming back to campus, you know, at Princeton. In the fall, it was totally virtual. So nobody was on campus. But now it's still going to be virtual learning, but they're allowing students to be on campus. There's not many of our wrestlers who are choosing to come back to campus. So right now it's really, there are no activities, like there's no wrestling activities through the Princeton University, like the Princeton University wrestling program. You know, we have the NJRTC that is run by Reese Humphrey. So they can choose to go and do workouts with him and things like that, obviously all following all state protocols and things like that. So that's really kind of where we're at as a program. You know, that's just kind of finding ways to get better and, you know, stay within the guidelines that we're given.
With a lot of these, you know, RTC cups and these different cards coming into place, I know you actually just competed at one as well. Is that something that, you know, you're getting some of the guys talking to them about probably getting into just, you know, to keep them fresh in competition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been talking to, you know, the other Ivy League coaches and seeing if that's something that they'd be interested in. Most of all the Ivy League programs have an RTC. So, that's definitely been talked about. Nothing is on the docket. Like we didn't set it up, but we definitely had talks. So we probably could see something going on in the next month or so.
Okay. Is there anything else you can tell me about that? Is that kind of like tight knit for now?
Well, I just don't. I mean, again, there's nothing solidified, right? It's literally just been talks. There's nothing like, hey, we have a date, we have a team that we're wrestling, so we don't have like a venue or anything like that. So to give you any details, I would just be making them up.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that. But yeah, I mean, we've definitely been in talks with the other Ivy League coaches and just seeing if that's something or not. You know, the RTCs is really what it is. It's talking within the RTCs and seeing if that's something that they want to set up and get matches. Just
Right.
like, just like the Summit, the Penn RTC or the PRTC set up a card. And that's definitely something that we're looking to possibly do.
Right. We'll definitely keep a lookout for that. Well, I just mentioned how you actually competed at one of these yourself. You actually came out of retirement for this. I know you wrestled Chris Flieger. Didn't exactly go the way you would hope, but as I mentioned, you're coming out of retirement, so it's been a while. What kind of went into that decision, and how did you prepare for that?
So I'm actually like I'm part of this wrestlers Facebook group or wrestling fan group. It's called the Scramble. And just out of the blue, they like kind of tagged me in, like they wanted to get a match. They wanted to get this Legends match. And then they threw out Chris Flieger. And I was just kind of looking and kind of following. I wasn't really kind of participating. So then they, the talks got more in depth and more detailed, and they wanted to pay for me to wrestle and things like that. So I was like, oh man, this is actually getting serious. And then they, Chris Bono, the head of the Wisconsin RTC, he called me up and was like, hey, let's do this. And so I was like, you know what, let's do it. I mean, right now, this is the time for me to do it, right? I mean, I have no coaching responsibilities. It's not like we're competing on a weekly basis. So I could actually take the time and be a little selfish and kind of get back in that competition mode. And it was actually really refreshing to be on the other side of the fence and being the athlete and having my athletes coach me up and train with me and get me ready and actually have the other coaches kind of be my coach. And so that was really cool. And just getting something else to train for, I think was just, especially during this quarantine, man, I hit some highs weight wise. The quarantine did a number on me. So it was good to get back sweating and training. I found myself going down to my basement where I have a treadmill and a stationary bike and doing some hellacious workouts, trying to really break myself. And it was cool. And like you said, with the match, I brought my son out there, and he was my coach. So that was a pretty awesome experience for me and him. There's a really cool picture of the last time I actually competed, which was 10 years ago. And he's probably close to 3 at the time. And me and him are walking across the mat, and I'm in my wrestling shoes. And obviously he doesn't remember it, but that picture's like really special to me. So to get a similar picture of that, and to share that experience with him was pretty amazing. Again, in the match, I honestly didn't really care that I lost. I was actually most upset about not hitting cooler stuff. Like I really wanted to hit some cool stuff out there and really put on a show. And it's funny, I got caught up in just the winning and losing. The first period, I got caught up in, and I was like, man, I just need to open up. I should just open up. And I saw the score, and I'm winning on criteria with 27 seconds left. And I'm thinking to myself, man, is this really how I want to go out? Like my last match, winning a 1-1 match where no takedowns were scored. I go, that is total opposite of me and my wrestling. So I just said, you know what, screw it. Let's go. I was like, let's go. It is what it is. I'm going to go for the kill, and I'm either going to kill or be killed. And hey, it didn't work out for me, but hopefully, it's funny because that's like a philosophy I try to ingrain in my guys, and like continue to be exciting and be aggressive and put up points. There's times where you got to shut it down. You got to win a match. I mean, if it was for an NCAA title, I would have been doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty awesome experience to put on a singlet again, make a weight, get out there, put the headphones on. I was like, it was almost like I was back in 2006 again, warming up and stuff like that. So yeah, dude, it was really special.
You mentioned bringing your son over there too, and how special of an experience that was. Like, well, kind of talk to me a little more about that. Did he know about a lot of your accolades from, your past days and things like that? Did he kind of talk to you about, like, because I know he wrestles too, so did he kind of like talk to you about things within the match?
Yeah, so he, now he's older, so now he can find things out himself. I can't really hide things from him. I never really, when he was younger, I never talked about what I did or anything like that. I don't want what I did being his, the standard of whether he's successful or not. Right? It's like that's not what I want. The things I want for him out of this sport is to gain a tremendous work ethic, to be tough, to go out there and again put yourself out there. Put yourself out there and compete, and come away from wins and losses and make adjustments. So I think those are the things that I want for him from the sport. I mean, obviously, whether he falls in love with it like I did it is what it is, right? But there's definitely some real big things that you can take away from this sport that transition right to real life, right? And that's the things that I want for him, and that's why I want him to do this sport. The wins and losses doesn't matter, right? I don't really care about that. So, like going out there, he's talking, and this was hilarious. So we get there. And there was a big time gap between when, the weigh-ins and stuff. I think we got there the next day. The weigh-ins were at probably, I think 3:30 or 4 o'clock. So we had a lot of time to just kind of hang out and chill in the hotel room. So he's asking me, he's like, "Hey Dad," he's like, "Do you know what Flieger does?" I was like, "Yeah, I got a good idea. I've seen some of his matches." And so he goes, "Hey," he goes, "I Googled," because I Googled Chris Flieger technique. He goes, "Nothing came up." He goes, but I watched one of his matches. And he's got a really good inside trip. I go, "All right, man." I go, "All right, that's good. That's good to know. He's got a good inside trip, so I'm not going to get inside trip." So that was, I was laughing, inside. I was kind of proud of him. He's like, he's really wanting me to like do well. He wants me to be prepared. He wants me to be aware of what my opponent's doing. So it's cool because now I could be like, "Hey, when you were the coach, I listened to you. Now I'm the coach. All right, now listen to me." So,
Yeah.
that was one funny moment when we were out there.
That's awesome. Well, Coach, you were a two-time New Jersey State champion for Glen Ridge High School. Obviously, Jersey is, up there with the best of them as far as high school wrestling goes. Kind of take me through that journey coming up in New Jersey wrestling there. What your experience was like wrestling in New Jersey growing up, and your initial exposure to wrestling.
So I think my story is a little different than a lot of guys. Where I started in the sport late. I was in sixth grade. It's funny. I was listening to Charlie, and he said he started in eighth grade, and that's just, I mean, unbelievable. The fact that he started in eighth grade and won a PA state championship by the time he was a junior, pretty amazing. So I started a little bit earlier than him. I was in sixth grade. Found some success early on. I was a pretty good athlete, so I took to it pretty quickly. I had been playing football my whole life, so double legging and tackling somebody was basically the same thing. So that's really all I did. and at that first year I got hooked. Like that was it for me. Like this sport is amazing, right? And because I was always the smallest guy in every team sport I ever did, whether it be soccer, football, baseball, whatever the case may be, I was always the smallest guy. But I always had a chip on my shoulder. I always thought I was the toughest guy. So the fact that I was going to get another kid who was my size, most of the time my age, that I could just, beat up on, that was something that intrigued me. And that's something I was like, yeah, man, I like this. Because usually I'm the one getting run over by the guy who's bigger than me. So yeah, that was my initial exposure. Then as I got better, my coaches, there's a family in Glen Ridge, they're like my second family. They're the Hauser family. They introduced me to a club, the Edge Wrestling Club. It's one of the, at the time, it was probably the #1 high school club in the country. And it was definitely the best one in New Jersey. So they said, hey, you got some talent. You have a ton of potential. You need to go here to get better. And that's when I started training with guys like Corey Cooperman, Tommy Noto was in there. Who else, man? Matt Anderson, Matt Valeni, ton of guys, right? Ton of guys were going in there and all around my weight. So initially I was getting beat up a lot. I was getting beat up in those, shark bait situations. But then, man, I just, my technique got really good. Well, not really good. I actually don't classify myself as a technical wrestler. I thought I was always, pretty strong and athletic and fast and quick and all that other stuff. And, but my technique kind of grew so much that I think that's the things that really helped me. So, and then, I never won kids states. The best I ever did was 4th, and I was in the 8th grade. Then my freshman year, I took 4th in the state as a freshman, which was, for me, at that time, it was like, man, if you placed in the states as a freshman, you were pretty damn good. And especially for my school only had one state place winner before me. There's one guy who ever placed at state. So, placing as a freshman was pretty awesome. So that following year, there were some really high expectations for me. I was the highest returning place winner. So I cut back down to 103. I placed at 103 my freshman year. I cut back down to 103 my sophomore year. I was cutting a ton of weight. I was probably as big as 125 in the football season. So cutting down to 103 was a huge stretch. And it took a toll on me towards the end of the season. I remember after losing, I got upset in the quarterfinals by a very talented kid, Bob Stinson. He upset me. He was the eighth seed. I was the 1st seed. He upset me. And then right after that match, instead of just getting ready for my next wrestleback match, which was probably going to be in like an hour or two, I went in the back and started cutting weight. I'm jumping rope and just all I was thinking about was that next weigh-in. That's all I was thinking about. I'm like, I just need to make weight, need to get to this next weigh-in, and then I'm done. And then it's over. So that I'm cutting weight. My coach comes back. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You got to wrestle." And like, they just called you on deck. So I run over there. I wrestled terrible. Kid beat me, straight up. He went out. He wrestled hard. He beat me and knocked me out of the tournament. So I went from placing fourth in the state as a freshman to not even placing as a sophomore. And that was a wake-up call. That was in my life in wrestling. I needed, hopefully, you don't want to have those, right? You want to have a clear, path where you just hit all your goals and you're successful and you don't face any adversity, but that's just not life. That's just not wrestling. So I needed like a speed bumper. I need something to knock me off of whatever pedestal I thought I was on and get back to work. So, that next year, I trained a lot in the summer. Even though I was playing football, I was still trying to, get to the club as much as I could. And I wound up going to a national tournament. It's when the NHSCA, it was basically before Virginia Beach ever happened. It was like this folk style nationals. They created it to kind of compete with Fargo. So I actually went out and I placed third down there, and I was like, man, I think I could be really good. It's funny. My goal was to be a state champ, and it's like I didn't really think I can do it until I went down and I beat some really good guys down at this national tournament. I mean, these guys were 2-3-time state champs, and I beat them. So, coming back into my junior year, I went undefeated. I won my first state title, and it was one of the best feelings, just from a competitor standpoint. Feeling that feeling of relief, but then also just like being proud that I set a goal and I worked my ass off and I achieved it, was pretty amazing. And at that point, I was like, man, I could do anything. Like I did this, I can do anything I want to do. And then that next year, my senior year, it was like, for me, in my mind, it was like not about winning a second state title. It was about dominating. It was like, I am going to dominate every single person. I set a goal. I wanted to break the single season takedown record in New Jersey, which was held by Damian Hahn, which I did break. So it was awesome to be out there. I ran into some more adversity. I wound up getting knocked unconscious in the regional semifinals. So that knocked me down into the wrestlebacks. They cleared me to wrestle. I have no idea how, but they cleared me to wrestle. I wound up wrestling and winning and taking third and qualifying for the state tournament, and then wind up, winning my second state championship. So winning in New Jersey, I think it's funny. I'm on this group text with a lot of guys who are high school wrestling coaches who I had wrestled with and who I'd grown up with. And I'm just like, man, we are just special creatures, dude. We are in New Jersey. We're just a special, like, it's just different. I don't know. We're just a different breed. Just like Long Island thinks the same thing. Long Island thinks like they're just a different breed of guys out there. And that's how I thought it was. It's like, I didn't think there was anything better than New Jersey, just wrestling wise. So that's kind of in a quick nutshell. That's my high school career.
Yeah, I mean, I can completely attest to what you're saying too, just from the Long Island aspect. I mean, I've been on forums back in the day where like guys are like go to the Rutgers matches or like see the Rutgers matches on TV and look at that fan atmosphere and not exactly, I guess they don't get it as much in Long Island. That's pretty similar to what goes on here. So, but the different breed thing is just true. Even like when you see the guys that are from Jersey that are wrestling for the schools over there, like a Princeton or Rutgers or Rider or whatever, and the Jersey guys that leave like you did, or like a Sebastian Rivera when he was at Northwestern, and they're talking just about that Jersey mentality and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's in the water.
Right. Well, I mentioned earlier how you were a part of, in my opinion, the toughest senior nationals bracket ever. Just gonna pull it up here for a second. I mean, in retrospect, obviously you guys were all pretty accomplished coming in, but what you did afterwards was spectacular. Yourself winning 2 NCAA titles. You had Ricky LaForge in there, who was a good wrestler in his own right. Nick Simmons, Nate Gallick, Travis Lee, Sean Bunch, Jacob Palomino, Drew Opfer, bunch of guys in there that went on to have a ton of success. You're talking world team members, multiple time national champs, All-Americans, the whole bit. Going into that tournament, did you like realize how tough that bracket was going, coming in, and what were your goals for that? I'm going to win a national title?
So just just with my mentality, like again, I was like, I'm gonna win, right? Like once I got that first state title, like I said to myself, I said I can do anything. Like I can win any tournament. Like I could beat anybody. Um, and the internet was different back then, right? Because I didn't know, like, outside of New Jersey, I literally, the only person I knew was Nick Simmons, and the only reason why I knew him or knew of him, I didn't know him. So the only reason I knew of him, we were it was my junior year, and it was spring of my junior year. We went up to this dual tournament in Battle Creek, Michigan. And so it's an all-star, team of New Jersey guys. And I never wrestled freestyle or anything like that, but a lot of the guys who were on that trip wrestled freestyle. So they knew Nick Simmons, and they knew like what he did. And he was supposed to be at this tournament. So I'm hearing these stories of Nick Simmons, right? Have no idea who this guy is, but they're like, man, he like chokes everybody out and he pins everybody. He's like, it was like a folk story, I was like, it was almost like, I was getting ready for bed, and these kids were telling me these stories of all these things he won. He pinned a kid in 2 seconds, and it was crazy. So going into that senior national tournament, I knew two kids. So I knew Nick Simmons because, again, they said he was supposedly the number one kid in the country. And then Ricky LaForge, because I heard that he was cutting down from 25 down to 19. So those are the only two kids I knew. So yeah, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, I'm winning this. And it's funny because I kind of compare it the same way in college. You you don't have, I hope I say this right. So I had a greater respect for what I did or I have a greater respect for the NCAA tournament now that I'm done than I did when I was wrestling. And what I mean by that is I step away and I look back, or even as a coach, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, the NCAA tournament is so damn tough. And like this guy didn't place, or this guy didn't win it. This guy could have, should have been a four-timer and didn't do that. And but when I was in it, I'm like, I'm gonna win. Like that was just it. Like I was like, I didn't. I hope this doesn't come across the right way. I didn't respect the tournament like that, like I do as a coach. I was like, hey, whatever tournament I'm going into, or whatever tournament I weigh in at, I'm winning that tournament. I'm not saying, oh man, that's a really hard tournament. That's a really tough tournament. Like look at all these tough guys. Like I just didn't approach it like that. Like, again, it might have been delusional confidence, or, getting back to that Jersey thing. I don't know. It might be a combination of all of those, but that senior nationals, yeah, man, I was just like, I'm going to win this. Right. And I knew it was going to be tough. Like it's a senior national tournament. I knew it was going to be tough, but like to go back, or actually look at it now, and I'm like, holy crap, that freaking tournament. That tournament produced 4 NCAA champions, I think. Wait, let's see. Me,
Nate Gannon, Travis Lee.
Yep, me. Yep. So 3 national champs. There was, I think, an additional like 3 NCAA finalists or 2 NCAA finalists. Big Ten champ. Tom Klum didn't even place at that tournament, and he won the Big Tens. He was a 2-time All-American. So yeah, I mean, that was it was wild, man. It was, but at the time, I'm just like, naive or ignorant. I don't know, or maybe both. Just, hey, I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna win it.
That's crazy, man. You mentioned Ricky LaForge earlier. He was a state champion at 125 pounds, and you said you had heard that he was cutting down. So when you get into that finals, and you're wrestling another Jersey guy who had won a state title at a weight above you, what's going through your mind at that time? Like, it's more of a challenge, or it's just another guy in front of you?
Yeah, so I think with Ricky, and I'm good with him now. But at that back then, I didn't like him. He didn't like me. Just within the Jersey circuit, we had been in weight classes. We never wrestled. So, again, like when you're competing, man, you find things to get you pissed, to put an extra chip on your shoulder. So for me, it was like it wasn't just a wrestling match; it was almost kind of personal too, because we were Jersey, and the fact that he thought he was going to come down from a higher weight class to my weight class and do well at this and win this. I was like, there's no chance, right? There's no way this kid's going to do that. So yeah, I mean, it was more than a match for me. It was, I was going to make it personal. And that's just the things I said to myself too. Whether it was, I mean, with Ricky, that was different because we, going through New Jersey, right? It's just like, kids, you're around. There's some other kids where I didn't even know them, and I would just make up stuff, to get me mad or to make it personal. Because I mean, that was, for me, it's like I wasn't that guy. I needed to get emotionally like into a match. Like I needed my emotions to be revving, right? That's like if I was too calm or I was too cool, I didn't have a good match. It was not like I needed something to get me emotionally charged up so I can best perform. So yeah, I mean, and then when he took me down first, oh man, I was so pissed. I was so pissed. He took me down first, and I'm like, no, there's no way. Like that's it. No more. No, we're not playing. I wasn't playing games to start with. Now I was like, man, we're gonna make this into a street fight. Like that's it. Like so I mean, I'm 38 years old now. It's fun to talk back, I think back about that and how I was and just how like it's funny. It's funny. It's like I think now I'm like, man, it's just a wrestling match. But for me, man, that was like pride. That was like life or death, man. There was no way I could lose that match. I couldn't go back to Jersey. If I lost that match, I would be staying in Delaware. That's it. So, well, good thing I came out on top.
Right, right. Well, Coach, I actually heard an interesting story from my father.
Oh, jeez.
Everybody knows the passionate fan and everything that he is. He can be a bit of a character when he gets into things, but he's a big supporter of Hofstra wrestling. A lot of it back then at the time, and he said he actually went to this tournament because he wanted to watch Jacob Palomino because he had heard about him. But he said after watching you wrestle through this tournament, I think you were getting ready for the finals, and he goes like into the tunnel while you're warming up, just walks up to you, never met you before a day in your life, and is just like, you got to go to Hofstra, man. You got to go to Hofstra. I say that, number one, do you remember that? And two, I say that because, your recruitment, what were the schools that were looking at you and what ultimately led you to choose Indiana?
So I don't remember. I remember your dad. Obviously, I remember your dad from my coaching days at Hofstra. And he was, man, talk about somebody who's passionate about a team and about just Long Island wrestling in general. Dude, your dad, I was like, this dude just loves wrestling, loves Long Island, loves Hofstra. So I remember him more from there. At that senior nationals, I don't remember him coming up to me. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but for me, I was in my zone. Like I don't remember people tell me I did things or try to tell me things that happened in the matches or whatever, and I'm like, hey man, I was just focused on the task at hand and me winning a championship. So, but I wouldn't put it past your dad to come up to me, right, and tell me I got to go to Hofstra. So that I don't remember, but what so at that same tournament was Mike Mena, who had just gotten the assistant coaching position at Indiana, and he saw me wrestle. At that time, I was being recruited by Rider, UNC, West Virginia. I think that's really it. Oklahoma a little bit. So and Indiana, I never even talked to Indiana. So after that tournament, they got my number. Mike got my number, And I was talking to him, and I was talking to the head coach, Dwayne Goldman. And I was like, I just didn't have any. I knew I wanted to get out of New Jersey. That was one of like my not goals. It was just I wanted to get away a little bit, kind of spread my wings, try and figure some things out on my own, really experience life on my own. So I was like, hey, I really want to kind of get out of New Jersey. So as much as I love the Ryder coaches, they were great guys. I just couldn't see myself, being an hour away from home, and I just wanted to get away. And I love my family. I got a huge Italian family. They're all crazy, and I love them all. But I had to get out and experience some new things. And I was talking to West Virginia. I was talking to UNC, and Indiana wanted to bring me out on a visit, and they were going to bring me out like on a Wednesday, Thursday, and that's kind of unusual for the most part. So I talked to my head coach at the time, the head high school coach, Dirk Phillips. I said, hey, Dirk, I was like, I don't know if I want to go out, I don't know if I'm even really considering Indiana. It was really kind of down in West Virginia and UNC. And I was like, man, he's like, who are you kidding? He's like, you get to miss school. It's like a vacation, man. They're going to pay for you. You go out, you eat a couple of good meals. He's like, it's like, again, it's vacation for you. So I was like, all right, you know what? Might as well. So they flew me out, and I went out there on a Wednesday, and it was beautiful out there. It was like in the middle of April. So this is like, again, these kids are committing so early now. That was April of my senior year in high school. I still had not committed or anything. I actually took my first official visit in April after my wrestling season. So like the April of my senior year was my first visit. And so I'm in Indiana. Man, the school was amazing. The weather was great. It was like 82 degrees. I'm like, this is amazing. They had this was actually one of their like biggest it's like a biggest party week. It's called Little 500. And it starts on like a Monday and it ends on a Sunday with this big bike race. But everybody's, throwing parties, and it was pretty awesome. And I got to meet all the guys on the team. And they, they're like, hey, it's the Big Ten conference, it's the number one wrestling conference in the country. You got Mike Mena, who's still training. He was ranked either second or third on the Olympic ladder at 121. So that was going to be my workout partner. And then they sold me on a business school that they knew I was never going to get into. So, but that was where I was like, hey, I want to go to, I want to do business and things like that. So I wanted to commit right there. I actually did commit right on the spot on that Thursday, right before they took me to the airport. They sat me down and they're telling me all these things. They're getting me all hyped up. So I was like, hey, coach, he's giving me his last pitch. And I stopped him cold. I was like, hey, coach. And he eyes got all big. I said, I'm in, man. I want to come. He's like, no way. We all like going crazy. I was like, hey, but I got to call my mom. I got to call my mom. So I called my mom right from the office. I told this story 100 times, but I call her and I was like, hey, mom. I was like, I think I'm going to Indiana. She's like, no, don't sign anything. She really wanted me to go to Ryder. She wanted me to stay home and be an hour away from home. So, so I wound up going back home. I didn't sign anything or anything, but they, at that time, they could give you the national letter of intent. So they had it all, and I could take it home. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, this place is amazing, and it was, she kind of knew. She's like, yeah, you know what, you got to get out. You gotta spread your wings a little bit. You gotta experience some new things. So, but I went there and it wasn't all smooth sailing. I ran into a lot of, I had a lot of trials and tribulations there, and really, became the man that, I was slowly becoming. And I had to learn some hard lessons and really just learn how to get tough and know that things aren't going to be smooth all the time. There's going to be a lot of bumps and there's going to be a lot of things that I got to push through. And, I'm going to have to fight fight with myself a lot. I think that's something that's, you know, your inner self it's your biggest enemy and your biggest supporter, you know, and the biggest reason why you actually do the things you do. But sometimes you got to fight that battle, right? And I learned that I got to fight that battle and I got to beat it. And because I can't beat another guy if I can't even beat myself.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, that's sort of that's sort of the story about how I ended up at IU.
Right, right. I mean, you had some success early on over there too. I mean, it's the training situation. You know, Mike Meta, the success he had at Iowa. You know, having two Hawkeyes in your coaching staff, I'd imagine, is pretty good for the room. But you know, your success kind of went early on. I know you placed at the Big Tens your freshman year, but you got hurt, so you weren't able to wrestle at the NCAA tournament. And your following year, you were an All-American, placed 8th, and then went on to win your national titles. What were kind of the things you guys were going through that helped get you to those points?
So actually, my freshman year, I didn't wrestle at the Big Ten tournament. So
Oh,
I got
okay. Apologies.
I got hurt. No, it's all right. I got hurt prior to that, and um, I've told this story too. I mean, my redshirt freshman year is probably the worst competitive year, and it has nothing to do with the wins and losses of my career, and it's actually the turning point in my career. Um, Halfway through that year, I wanted to quit wrestling. I got injured, didn't know how to deal with wrestling when I was injured. Never wrestled ever in my high school career. I mean, especially except for a concussion, but I mean that's different. That's like a concussion is you get hit, you know, a couple days later you feel better, or at least that's what happened with me, right? So, but dealing with a knee injury, something that's going to nag me, something that's going to be uncomfortable, something that's going to hurt. Um, and for me, I just wasn't tough enough mentally to push through that. You know, I was losing the guys who I knew I could beat or who I'd beat prior. Um, and because I'm putting all this emphasis on being healthy, right? Feeling good, feeling 100%. And that's all I thought about. Man, I'm not 100%. Oh my God, like this hurts and blah, 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 blah. So that whole year was me fighting myself again, and not being tough, not being mentally tough, you know, not doing the right things with my weight, uh, you know, going out too much, you know, like to be blamed, you know, to be, you know, blunt about it. I just wasn't a good competitor. I just wasn't, wrestling wasn't at the forefront for me. Um, and so I got hurt at the end of the year. I got a concussion, and I didn't want to wrestle. I wanted to use that concussion as a reason to not wrestle at the Big Ten tournament so I can have an easy way out so I'd be done. Um, but my coach, and this is the best thing he ever did for me, was he said, "You're going to come. You're coming to the Big Ten tournament. You're going to come and watch your teammates wrestle. You're going to help them. You're going to carry the coolers. You're going to carry the grocery bags. You're going to help guys work out. You're going to help guys cut weight, whatever they need. You're going to do it." So I said, I was pissed because I didn't want to do it. But I went there and I'm sitting in the stands and I'm eating a freaking turkey sandwich after weigh-ins, and I see all these guys who I either beaten at one point or I had good matches with, or whatever the case may be. And I see them competing and winning. And, you know, Nick Simmons, a guy who I beat, I think he either, you know, placed really high or he even won, he might have won that Big Ten. I don't even remember. But at that point, I was like, I need to change. I need to change. I'm not, you know, the cliche of I'm not all in is I wasn't. I really wasn't all in. I wanted everything done on my terms, and I didn't want to hear anything from anybody else because I thought, you know, I was successful because I was. I mean, I was successful up to that point, but I just, you know, when I was younger, I took direction. I was coachable, and then I got to a point where I wasn't coachable and I wasn't taking direction. So right after the NCAA tournament, I sat back. I had a meeting with the coaches, and I said, "Hey, you know, obviously this is, you know, not how I wanted my freshman year to go. It's all on me. I took full responsibility. told them that I'm changing, and I did, it wasn't like a complete 180. It was, I think I took a huge step, just from a mentality standpoint, and getting on board with what they wanted to do training wise, and how they wanted me to wrestle, and good things happened, and so then I find myself my sophomore year. I'm in the NCAA tournament. I'm the number one match. I wound up losing, not just from, honestly, it was the first time I've ever gotten nervous in my life. It was kind of wild because usually, like, I love the spotlight. Like, the bigger the crowd, the better for me. So coming back, my first wrestle back, I wound up tearing my ACL, and it was something that, if I didn't experience what I experienced a year before, I probably would have defaulted out of that match, and I probably would have never All-American as a sophomore. But having, what happened to me my freshman year, or what I did to myself my freshman year, I refused to let that happen again. And so my trainer, and I think he kind of knew what I needed to hear. He's like, it's just sprained, And I said, am I good? Am I good, Kip? He's like, yeah, you're good. He's like, are you good? Can you wrestle? I said, I can wrestle. I can wrestle. So I wrestled 3 matches that night with a torn ACL, and I was like, and I'm on the treadmill, and I'm running, and as I'm running, my knee is like shifting. It's almost like wobbling, right? And I'm like, man, this doesn't feel like a sprain. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm not a doctor, but man, this doesn't feel right. And so, but I wound up, wrestling back. I won 5 straight matches, and I wound up getting on the podium, and I wound up defaulting. Once I was an All-American, I wrestled 1 more match, wound up tweaking it again. And I said, that's, I'm an All-American. Like, I need to get my knee checked out now. So, and then,
Yeah.
and then I went on to win nationals my junior and senior year. And, it's funny, man. I had to, for me, it wasn't rock bottom. It's not like bottom, but in my mind, I was like, for me, pride wise, that was rock bottom. Like me, my freshman year, like the way I acted and the way I was like, man, that is not who I am. Like, that's not me at my core. So I needed to feel that, right? I needed to, that was almost like a big serving of motivation for me. I needed that. So yeah, that's kind of, some stories in there, and in those successes are always those doses of adversity that you got to get through.
Are these things that you like take these experiences and like throw them in, as a coach for your wrestlers?
Oh yeah. I mean, I try not to always go back to like, oh well, this is what happened to me, and this is how I did things, and this is what I've come to the point where I have almost as much coaching experience as I have wrestling experience, right? Like actual competitive experience. So I can go and I can say, hey man, a kid I coached, back in this time, this happened to him, and this is how he did it. So I don't always try and go back to my career and the way I did things, but sometimes it's like, that's why you're a coach, right? That's why you were successful, because those things worked, right? I mean, it doesn't always work for everybody, but one guy's going to be like, hey man, that I like that. Like what you just said or what you did, I think I like that. I think that's going to work for me. And then, there's some guys who are going to be like, hey, coach, honestly, I don't think that's going to work for me. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but let's find something else then, right? Let's find another way to do it. I'm open. It's like and I think that's something that I think we do things a little different at Princeton. And it almost kind of took me getting here to learn that. And it's like, you have a relationship, right? You have a relationship with your wrestlers, and you got to it can't always just be do what I say right now, right? Do exactly as I say. There are some times where it's like, hey, shut up and do what I say. But most of the time it has to be like, hey man, like, this is what I think. What do you think? Like, what do you like? How's that? When I say this, like, what do you think? And then we just go from there. And I think that's where guys, build a trust in you as a coach, where they feel like, hey man, this dude is really trying to help me, you know, help me achieve my goals, right? It's not just about me just listening to him and doing it, right? It's about him like trying to make things or trying to get to my goals with the most influence from him, right? From the wrestler, from the competitor. Like I want this kid to be like, hey, take responsibility for your training, right? I want you to have, I want your fingerprints all over your success, right? I don't want to just be the guy, molding you into an NCAA champ. I want you and me to do this thing together. So, it's taken me a while to kind of adapt to that, but that's what you got to do as a coach. You got to continue to evolve.
Definitely the makings of a good head coach as well. You know, you finish eighth as an All-American, and then that next year, like we both mentioned, you win an NCAA title. What was the mindset following the podium finish that led you to, or the training and the mindset that led you to win that first NCAA title?
So after my junior year or after my sophomore year?
Following your sophomore year.
It's I'm not going to say there was a huge mindset shift because I think I had the bigger one from my freshman and my sophomore year. It was really just continuing to improve as a wrestler, right? To strengthen up my weaknesses, right, and continue to sharpen my strengths. So again, I think like for me going into that NCAA tournament as a sophomore, I was like, I can win this. I actually really thought I was like, there's guys who I know I can beat. I was like, there's nobody in this bracket who I'm like, man, I just can't beat that guy. So I wouldn't say there was a huge mind shift, but the reality when I really was like, man, I'm gonna win this tournament was when I won the quarterfinals my junior year in the NCAA tournament. That's when I was like, I'm gonna win this. I'm gonna win this tournament. And actually, I'll rewind because I think I kind of, also during my sophomore year, I beat a guy from Michigan, Mark Moose. He was really tough. He was ranked third in the country at the time, and I wound up beating him in a dual meet. And at the time, I think I was ranked 13th or 12th or something like that, and he was ranked third. Right then and there, I was like, man, I can beat anybody. I was like, I can beat anybody. Like there's like this guy's ranked third in the country. Why can't I be the champ? So then fast forward, I always like that's when I really knew I could win. But when I knew I was going to win was when I won my quarterfinals match my junior year. I was like, there's nobody that's going to beat me. Not a chance. They're going to have to bring a bat to the mat because there's no way I'm losing. And that was, again, that's just my personality. I mean, cocky, confident, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I had swagger, like these kids say. I was just like, dude, that was me, man. I loved it. I loved the spotlight. I loved the big matches. The NCAA tournament was like, that was my show. That's where I put on a show for everybody. And, winning that match my junior year, I was like, yep, no way I'm losing.
Right. So, I mean, they always say winning it the second time around is always the hardest. So was it still the same doing the same exact things from the junior year on to the senior year? Was there any change? Because I mean, even in that NCAA tournament your senior year, like you beat Troy Nickerson in the finals. He was a true freshman, but he was no slouch. I mean, he came in as the first 5-time New York State champ ever, and at that point you made it look like a man versus a boy.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, to be honest with you, I was like, this was my second time around was easier. for me. I was like, I had one slip up in the Big Ten semis. Again, I didn't stick to the game plan that we came up with, and just didn't. Yeah, I just didn't. Just kind of reverted back to almost not. It was the thinking that I was thinking as a freshman. I kind of reverted back for a tournament. It's like I reverted back and then I just quickly snapped out of it. And going into, it's funny, man. Troy's a great dude. He's doing some amazing things. But at that time, dude, he was getting more press as a true freshman than I was when I was the returning national champ. Everybody just talked about Troy. And so again, man, that pissed me off, dude. That pissed me off so much. And I'm like, I cannot believe, like, I'm the returning champ. Like, I'm the guy with the belt. People got to be coming after me for this title, right? They got to go through me. And everybody's just talking about this kid. And I was like, when I saw that he beat Simmons in the semis, I was like, dude, I'm gonna work this kid. Like, this isn't even gonna be close. And again, that was just my personality. That was just the way I was thinking. And again, I had a huge chip on my shoulder. Again, this short guy from Jersey who's got a ton of personality and a lot to be upset about. I don't know, but yeah, man. When I saw that I had him, I was like, man. I honestly, I was going out there. I was like, I'm gonna major this kid. Like, that was he's good. Like, again, I talk about this now, and the things that Troy did, and he would have done way more if he didn't get injured.
Yeah.
But again, it was at that point for him, it was just experience, right? Like, for me, I was not nervous a bit. I was like, this is going to be fun. I was like, this is going to be a fun match. For him, he was probably really nervous. And it looked like he was really nervous, which is understandable. He's an 18-year-old kid. He's, on the biggest stage in NCAA wrestling, and as a freshman. So, and I took advantage of that. I was like, I'm going to be on him. I'm not going to let him work into this match. I'm going to be on him. I think I got in on the first takedown within the first minute or so. And just, piled it on from there. But yeah, I was pissed, dude. I was pissed. Like, leading up that it's almost like right from Christmas, that's all they talked about was Troy Nickerson. It's like, Troy Nickerson, man, he's the phenom, freshman phenom. I took that personal. I took that personal, and like I said, man, that was one of the things that I used to fuel me. I took that stuff and it fueled me. And I was not a guy that you wanted to give any of that to. I was so yeah, that was kind of how things shaked out my senior year.
So, you talk a lot about how, your mentality is like the swagger and, the cockiness and things like that. Is that for you, like in coaching, like with the programs you've been in? Do you bring that mindset in with you as well? Like, I'm here and we're trying to get national champs and, team titles and things like that.
So no, not with my guys. I like to think that it's not about me. Again, I hope my guys know that I would do anything for them, and it's really not about me.
Not so much you, just like, when you're there, like I get what you're trying to accomplish there. I mean,
yeah. So the way I kind of like, I try to convey it to them is embrace the spotlight, right? Embrace it. Don't shy away from it. You should want as many people in the stands. You should want all the chips on the table, right? Like, you want it for everything. Like, that match, like don't crawl into a hole because you're in a big match, right? If the match is on the line, if the dual meet's on the line, like, you should want that. You should want it to come down to you. You should want it to come down to you against a guy who's maybe ranked higher than you, right? Or right there with you in the rankings. like, that's the thing. It's like, you should want that. Like, don't shy away from that stuff. And I think that's probably the one thing that I do try to convey to my guys. And, you know, again, it's, you know, I don't like to say, hey, you got to be cocky or anything like that. I try to, you know, kind of spin it in a different way, but sometimes it comes across as that. But again, I also know that every guy is not the same, right? Every guy has a different personality. So you can't get, you know, a guy who's pretty calm and, he's not high energy or whatever. Like, you can't get him all revved up because now he's out of his element, right? Now you just messed him all up. So the key for me is knowing my athletes and knowing what they need, right? Some guys need me to be crazy and get them all jacked up and get them revved up and slap them in the face and send them out there. And then, you know, they tear some guy's arms out. Some guy, he just needs like to be calm and just to be like, you know, talked to and just reiterate the things that he needs to do. And he goes out there and he does it. So I think that's probably the one thing that I think I've done well as a coach is trying to figure out these guys, because they're all different and knowing that they need different things. So yeah, I mean, you have your personality, but you also got to know your athletes and you got to know which one needs which personality, right?
Right.
You gotta have some split personalities, with your guys, right? You know, because again, the same personality doesn't come across the same way, for every guy.
Right. Did you know you wanted to get into coaching right out the gate?
Nah. I thought, it's funny, like, I thought I wanted to go into business and I thought I wanted to go on Wall Street, make a ton of money, you know, and or be like a sports agent. But then I didn't know, to be honest with you, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, oh man, maybe I'll just go into coaching and then we'll see where I go from there. So I was like, so it was actually between Hofstra and Virginia Tech. So I interviewed at both places. But then I wanted to get back home, right? So I spent 5 years away from home out in Indiana. So I was like, man, it's time for me to get closer to home, right? And I mean, obviously, Hofstra at the time was way more established than Virginia Tech, right? I think Virginia Tech had a ton of potential, and they had a new coaching staff, and they proved they can recruit and do some really good things. But it was like I'd be stepping into Hofstra, man. They're ready to rock and roll. Like there's like that team was set up when we got there. So I was like, yeah, let's see how this was. And when I took that job, man, it's funny, I was still immature. It's like every stage of my life, high school and college, it's like I had to mature. I had to mature. In every stage I had to mature. And I needed to experience things where it brought out my immaturity to know, like, hey, dude, you can't be acting like this, right? You gotta grow from this. So it happened in high school, it happened in college, and then it also happened at Hofstra. I wasn't the best coworker. Tom I knew wanted to pull his hair out probably a lot of times, that I was there, and when I was in the room, man, I was in the room, and I was, I love wrestling. I love coaching, or I loved the act of coaching, right? I loved the act of helping my guys achieve their goals. I loved helping guys improve, but I didn't live it, right? I wasn't living it. I was coming in late. I was, skipping out on some of my guys who needed me, and it's like, but when I was there, I was all in, but you got to be there, right? Got to be there. So, I learned a lot of things through mistakes at Hofstra, just from my career. And I think obviously I could talk about that now. It's funny, man, you got to own up. It's funny, the mistakes and the things that I did wrong are the reasons why I'm successful, because if I didn't do those things, maybe I just would have been mediocre, right? Maybe I just would have been average. But because I had those mistakes and I had those downfalls and I had those real experiences of adversity, and then it catapulted me into a new level, right? And I think the same thing happened when I was at Hofstra from a coaching standpoint, right? I just wasn't responsible. I was just not being a good coworker, and that then led me to really, really loving coaching and loving what I did, and just totally immersing myself into coaching and changing whatever program I'm at. I'm going to try and change it, right? And so I mean, it didn't start out. I did not love coaching when I first started. I just saw it as a job, and I saw it as a possible career. But then, then it jumped me into I can't even imagine doing anything else.
Right. I mean, you even saying that though, like you like when I talked to Charlie, he mentioned you had a club back in the day called the X Factor, and that's also what he called you, while you were there. And even I talked to Justin, and he said how close you guys were and things like that. But I mean, I gotta imagine like while you were there, a lot, because they were set up for success, but they kind of always had letdowns. They were always a good team for a few years before you had gotten there, but they had always kind of had letdowns in the NCAA tournament. Your first year you got there, they finished 7th in the country.
So yeah, obviously I'm pretty hard on myself. So, I don't like to let myself off the hook when it comes to the past. But I will say, like, I develop relationships, and when guys know that, when I let guys know I'm all in, like, and I'll do whatever you need. I would do whatever I know, like whatever they needed. And I thought, doing that with Charlie and doing that with Lou and doing that with Justin. I mean, those guys were guys who I worked out with. Same thing with Dave Tomasetti, and Steve Bonanno. I mean, those guys, like, those were the guys who I rolled with, and they knew, like, when I was there and they needed me, if they called me and they needed me, I was there, right? It was getting to the office at 9:30. That's when the things that was troubles for me, when I was 23 years old. So, but if a guy needed me to come in and drill with him and help him cut weight at 9:00 at night, I'm there. Let's do it. You need it? I'm there. Or if he's like, hey, I really need you in the morning, I need the drill, then I'm going to get my ass there. And I'm going to do that because he needs me. So yeah, I would say, because that's what my coach did to me, or did for me. He was there, man. Like, if I called him up at 10:00 at night and said, hey man, Mike, I need you to cut weight with me, he'd be like, I'll be there in 15 minutes. So, like, I learned that stuff. And that's what I tried to, give that to my guys. And that's what, I give to my guys at Princeton. I hope that they know that if they ever needed anything, I'm in there. I can work out with you. I can go get you, like Charlie said, gum. I love it. He's like, Rob Ansbach went and got him gum, and that was like the biggest thing for him. But you don't know what's going to be like for him. Like, that was huge for him. Right. Like, and that's something Rob Ansbach is like, I wouldn't even think twice about doing that. Right. It's like, I do it. That's it. Like, it's not, one of my athletes asked me to do something, I'm going to do it. Because again, I think that goes back to the relationships. Like, it's like, how can I expect this kid to be like, hey, run through this brick wall, but he asked me to do something. I'm like, I can't do it, man. I'm sorry. That, like, it's a two-way street, dude. Like, you got to build trust. You got to build a sense of, like, man, like, we're on the same page. So, he calls me an X factor. I mean, honestly, like, I was just doing what he needed, and I thought, I was giving him what I thought he needed too. But it was great, man. I was so lucky coming in with those guys. I was so lucky to be on that coaching staff and to be on that, with that team to play 7th in the country with guys like Chris Weidman and Mike Patrovich and man, I mean, again, like so many good guys who just worked their asses off and like giving me these memories. I mean, we beat the #1 team in the country in a dual meet. It was awesome. It's one of the things that I'll never forget. It was such an amazing experience, beating Minnesota, who was #1 at the time, and they go on to win the national championship. Their only loss was to us, only loss was to Hofstra, some small school on Long Island. So yeah, I was fortunate, dude. I stepped into a awesome situation, and so we did some good things.
Right. Most def. You mentioned heading over to Hofstra, to get closer to home. You end up heading back to Indiana for a little bit, doing some coaching over there, and then ending up at Princeton. Talk to me a bit about how you ended up at Indiana, and then ultimately ending up back home in New Jersey to Princeton.
Yeah. So again, I had an opportunity. I think we sort of had a falling out with Tom Shiflett. And again, it was nothing to his doing. It was things that I just wasn't mature, and he just think we needed to move in a different direction. So I was fortunate at the time that a position opened up at Indiana, and and again, I think that's when my love really grew for coaching, and and then it was, on top of it being my alma mater, right? That was like, not only is this a program that I want to help build, but it's my program, right? It's a program where I was successful at. I spent 5 years. So going back there was pretty awesome. Helping recruit, really good guys there was pretty awesome. We coached some good All-Americans. I was fortunate to be able to coach Angel Escobedo, the only 4-time All-American at Indiana, now the head coach at Indiana. So that was really cool for me because Angel was actually a guy who I helped recruit, right? Or I was a 5th-year senior, or actually I was a redshirt junior when he was coming on his recruiting visit. So I hosted him on his recruiting visit, and then he was a true freshman when I was a 5th-year senior. So it's pretty cool to come back now as a coach and help him try to chase his dreams. So that was really cool. I stayed there for 3 years. Chris Ayers, so he actually interviewed me after my 2nd year at Indiana. And for me, it wasn't like I was trying to leave. It was just I just wanted to get some experience, just interview wise, and with Chris, he was like, he what he was doing at Princeton was pretty well at that time. It wasn't amazing, but I was like, man, this dude, like, he's got the worst program in the country, but his plans are like unreal. And I'm like, I sat down and talked to him before he ever even interviewed me, and just talking about his plans for this program. And I was like, man, we had just, my first match, or it might have been my 2nd or 3rd match coaching at Hofstra, we beat him like 56-0. So I'm like, and then you fast forward probably 4 years, and he went from not even winning a dual meet or a match, right, in a dual meet to having like 2 or 3 NCAA qualifiers. And I'm like, man, like this is like, he's doing some special things, like just in that time frame. So I was like, I took an interview with him, and we sat down and we talked, and I was blown away by his interview, or just by his plans again for the program. But it wasn't right for me. That, like, at that time, I still had some things that I thought, man, we had a really good recruiting class coming off of redshirt. I want to see where this goes. So I kind of told him and said, hey, Chris, I really appreciate you bringing me out. I just, I'm probably gonna have to pull my name. I think I'm just gonna stay here at Indiana. And he was fine with it. He said, you know what, hey, he's like, I appreciate you coming out and everything like that. And then the following year, he calls me. He calls me out of the blue, and he says, "Hey Joe," he goes, "Do you have?" And I had been, me and my wife found out we were pregnant with our second child, and we kind of have been talking, and things happen at Indiana again. Like, it seems like I'm always running to speed bumps and adversity. So we were in a bad place, and he called me, and he said, "Hey," he's like, "Do you have Angel Escobedo's number?" And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Remember I was telling you last year, we're going to probably have another full-time position open up next year." He's like, "So I want to get a lightweight into that full-time position, and I was interested in asking Angel." Now, backstory: I knew Angel was not getting into coaching. All right, so I said, "Hey, would you be interested in another national champion, from Indiana?" And he goes, "Who, you?" I said, "Yeah." I was like, I think I'm ready. I think I'll be interested." And he's like, "All right." He's like, "Well, you come in for an interview." I was like, "Hey man, if you need me to interview again, I'll interview again." I go, "But I'm ready. Like, if you want me to come," he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You'll just take the job?" I was like, "I'll just take the job." So I mean, me and him laugh about that all the time. It's like, it's kind of wild how things work out. And then right there, boom, I'm back in New Jersey, and I'm back an hour away from my family up north. And we started, man. And it's like, dude, like, again, like, then it's like my love for coaching just jumped another level. And then I really started to work on what I needed to do to be the best coach, right? Like, how can I expand my coaching ability? Like, how can I get better in administrative roles, within my position, and what can I take on that can help this program, right? It's like, it's not, again, just about teaching the best high crotch and best stand up in the country. It's about being a well-rounded coach, and that's where I really think just my career has just exploded. Just from a professional development standpoint, and just to help Princeton go from, when my first year there, we were 2-13, we had 0 national qualifiers, to last year we had 4 All-Americans. I mean, we didn't have a season, but they were honored as All-Americans. The year before, we were a top 15 program, to this year being ranked, or last year being ranked as high as 5th in the country. And it's like, God, like, but then I go back to my first interview with Chris, and it's like, he saw it in a crystal ball. He's like, these are the things that he was telling me that we can do. And I was like, man, this dude, like, is a visionary, man. Like, he's got like this, it's just like, can't really put my finger on it, but like, when you get around him, like, dude, you're just like, he just captivates you, and you're in, right? Like, he has this idea, you're in. So I jumped all in, man. I was like, that's it. And I saw something that was really special and that has a ton of potential. And I think we have just begun to scratch the true potential of what this program can be.
Definitely agree with you on that. From what I see, Patrick Glory, high All-American, a guy who I expect to see competing for national titles once you guys get back in it. So just can't wait to see you guys get back. Is what's next for you guys? I know, right, like we talked about earlier in the interview, right now there's nothing really going on, no season and everything, virtual learning and stuff like that. But what's next for you guys? Do you know, like, fall 2021 semester, if you're going to be able to have a wrestling season, have those conversations started at all?
No, they haven't started, but I would say the one thing that's real definitive in what's next for us is probably the last chance qualifier. That's like the last chance qualifier for the Olympic trials. That's probably something that we're gonna be looking to train for, and that's like I think that's like a week or two after the NCAA tournament. So that's the definite, right? There's other opportunities that are in the works that might be before that, but that is the definite thing that we are going to be training for, um, you know, in the end of March, and then that leads into there's age level world team in May, I think. So those are the things that we're getting our guys excited about, right? That's what we're training for, or getting these guys ready for, or at least preparing them mentally. Be like, hey, this is what we're gonna have when the NCAA's are over. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I don't know. I just can't see us not having another season. Like, I don't know. Like, there's nothing, it's purely speculative, but I just can't see us not having another season. I mean, that would be truly, like, yeah, that'd be heartbreaking, man. Like, I don't even know how I would handle it. If they told us we couldn't wrestle again, I don't know. That'd be tough.
Right. Well, Coach, I want to thank you again for coming on. This was an interview I was definitely looking forward to, following your success for a long time as both an athlete and coach, and I really appreciate you coming on with me. Is there anything else you got for us before you get out of here?
No, man, make sure you tell your dad. I'm a little disappointed. I thought he was going to jump on this view, but I know how he is. He'd probably hijack it and be talking. We'd be talking for another 3 hours. So, but your dad was is the man. He was talk about passionate about, like, a guy who would be at every dual meet, who would be at every high school match, tell you about every kid he thought was good. I mean, those are the people that programs need, especially a program like Hofstra, where, like, we didn't have 10,000 fans, but man, we had 2,000 of the most passionate fans. Those dual meets, man, when we packed, I think it wasn't always called the Mac Center. I forget what it used to be called when I was there. Maybe it was called that when I was there too. But man, those dual meets, even though we were getting 25, maybe 3,000 people, but that was a special atmosphere. Those were some special teams that I hold, dear to my heart, and gave me some of the most amazing experiences that I've ever had as a coach. So, Hofstra, Dennis is doing some good things. He's starting to turn that thing around, and I really hope that the Long Island and the Hofstra faithful can get behind it, and because sometimes it's not always about just getting behind a successful program. It's getting behind it because you love them, right? Because you love them and you know that it's going to turn around. And I think that's where fans kind of go wrong a little bit, where, like, man, a program might not be doing well, so they stop showing up. It's like, you can't do that, right? And that's something that's actually pretty special about Princeton. When I got there, even though we didn't have a ton of fans going there, but we had a group of just passionate wrestling alumni from Princeton that were at every match. When they were not winning one dual meet or not winning one match in the dual meet, to now, again, we had 3,000 fans against Iowa. So, and we put 16,000 fans in a football stadium when we wrestled Rutgers. So, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like that, but these people were there from the start. So, Hofstra is is a place that, again, man, it was huge for me. Did some amazing things, and I'm happy that you're kind of bringing that to light. You know, the past Hofstra, but I think it also should just show the people that are on Long Island, like, hey, you should still get behind them. You know, every program, you know, D1 programs need their fan base, and they need it. You know, whether they're winning or losing, they need you, because we're all. Here's the thing: D1 wrestling, there's not many sports, or there's not many teams, and wrestling has to get behind itself, you know, and needs to get out, and you can't complain about programs getting dropped if you're not willing to go and spend money at a match, you know. So that's probably my last. You know, I already ranted a little bit too long, but but yeah, man. Rich, I really appreciate you having me on. This was really fun. Kind of taking a walk down memory lane. So tell your dad I said hi, and you know, maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Most def. Hopefully we'll get to do it once the following season comes around. Thank you again for coming on, Coach. It's Coach Joe Dubuque and Rich, and we will see you guys next time.